Now, FNCS has a lot of problems currently, especially this year in my eyes. The first one, let's get straight onto it, only 2 qualifiers. This means that basically the season is over for the majority of players after those first 2 weeks. Obviously not talking about the big pros that make it through, but for the vast majority of players who play FNCS, your season's kind of over after that first, or that second qualifier is done. So, problem number 1. Problem number 2, there's a massive break in the middle after qualifiers, before semis. I think in Season 1, it was 2 weeks. Season 2, it was 2.5 weeks. And then in Season 3, this time, Epic Games were on a summer holiday, and it was 3 weeks. So basically what ends up happening is you kind of just forget about FNCS. So once the qualifiers are done for the majority of players, and which would be the majority of viewers, you then just kind of forget about semis, and then semis sneaks up and you go, oh, it's right here, rather than following on from after the second qualifier into semis and then into grand finals each week. And the final one is, all that really matters is the grand finals right at the end. For the top players and for viewers watching the kind of broadcasts that are going on, the only thing that's really worth watching is the grand finals for pretty much all. If you watch the qualifiers, it's so easy for those top players to make it through to semis and to grands that the quality of the games aren't really that good. And it's kind of the same thing in semis. There's so many different opportunities for players to make it through. If they don't make it into grands in semifinals, they just kind of just mull about. They know they're going to make it through one way or another, so it's like there's not that much hype in seeing someone, ooh, are they going to qual, are they not? So those are the issues, and here is what I would suggest. Now, I saw Aussie do a video on this like a month ago, a couple weeks ago maybe, can't remember what it was. So that's where the idea for this one came from. But firstly, I think the easiest way to do this is to do more qualifiers. So, of course, 3 qualifiers, maybe 4. I would love the more the merrier, quite frankly, personally. I love going back to like World Cup time when there was like 10 weeks of quals. Now that might be too much, obviously, but I think more qualifiers gives more players opportunities to actually play, right? Like the average player who's going to jump into FNCS has more weeks to practice and to build up for, and their season actually leads and means something. So I think more qualifiers, and I'm pretty sure almost everyone is unanimously for that. But the problem then becomes when you have lots of qualifiers is that the quality of the finals, so like the last round of each qualifier, is usually worse. Because say you have some of the best teams in the world that do really good in week 1 and week 2, chances are they're already going to be qualified to the semifinals. So in that third qualifier, the final one, they have no reason to play good and they just kind of grief people, and it's just a bit stupid. So my theory and way to fix this is that we have auto qualification slots. Now everyone's going to go, no, I hate like FNCS when people auto qual. So the way it's done previously is that, say if you won week 1, you will skip week 2, 3 semifinals and you'll go straight to grand finals. No. For me, what I want to do is series point auto qualifications. So say you take the top 20 teams on the series points, and rather than them going to the semifinals, they will go straight to grand finals. So they can auto qualify through to grands based on how they do in the first 2 qualifiers. So this means that if you're a top team, you really have to still try in all 3 qualifiers to get onto the top 20 of the overall leaderboards. If you don't know how series points work, let me just quickly explain. You do well in qualifier 1, based on where you place, you get some series points. You do well in week 2, you get more series points, and then by the end of the qualifiers, all those are added up into the series point leaderboard, and then into the who qualifies to semis is usually based on this. However, I think if you're just going to have a system like that already, why don't you just make it so that the top 20 auto qualify through to grands? So there's a little bit more to play for when it comes to the top teams. However, you may still say, if you are intelligent, sorry if you didn't say this, that doesn't mean you're not intelligent, but you may think, well, does that really give any of the top teams a reason to grind? Because say again, you have that same example I used earlier, where they do good in week 1 and in week number 2. Does that mean that they still have to try in week number 3 because they might already have enough series points to make it through to grand finals? So again, they still might have nothing to do. Say they won week 1 and week 2. I mean, they can do anything in week 3 and they'll probably qual. Well, my theory here is prizing for qualifiers. Now, I have a slightly different way of doing this than I think most people would. And a lot of the time when we've had prizing in qualifiers, it's just been week 1, you come first, you get a certain amount of money. Week 2, same kind of thing. I have 2 options for this. But let's just say we're going to give $100,000 per FNCS, and we're just going to split it to EU and NA. Sorry, small regions, but we're trying to make something that's worth watching on a broadcast for the average people. So you could split this up in two different ways. Let's just say 50k goes to EU, 50k goes to NA. I know it hurts me to give the even to NA because EU's better and bigger, but you get the gist. They're both broadcast, right? So each FNCS, we have 50k to divvy up to EU, 50k to divvy up to NA. So the two ways I think you could split that up, the first one, which I think would be pretty interesting, would be similarly, just give it to the top 3 series points leaderboard teams. Now, this would mean, say for example, first on the series point leaderboard gets 25k, second gets 15k, and then third gets 10k. And they're also auto-qualifying through to Grands. So basically, out of the first 3 qualifier weeks, top 20 straight through to Grands, people below that go to semifinals, and the top 3 get some money. Now, this would mean that during the 3 qualifiers, all 3 of these, you are, as a top player, actually thinking, hey, do I really want to miss out on 25 grand potential for first? I should practice, I should play these qualifiers good, so that enables high quality games, and hopefully, for the most part, will stop people griefing. You know, it's still going to happen, it's still a Fortnite, it's going to happen at some point. People are still going to grief anyway. But another way that you could add on top of this, or another way you could split this, is that you could stagger prizing. So you could have no prizing in the first qualifier weeks, rather than doing it this way for the series points. Remove that. No prizing in week 1, a little bit of prizing in week 2, and then a lot of prizing in week 3, which means that as more teams gather series points, their incentive to grief is lower because there's prize money that they're missing out on, and if it's good prize money, maybe they do it. There's 3 FNCS a year. It's an extra $300,000. Epic Games, you can sort out. You're like a $40 billion company. Come on. We can get this extra 300k to get this idea moving here, okay? I like the series point leaderboard idea because that gives the top teams like way more reason to practice. Anyway, another way I would do this is to allow for a little bit of a catch-up mechanic here. So in week 1, you would get, say, 1 times series points. Say if you won, you get 100 series points. However, in week 2, the qualifier 2, maybe it'd be 1.5 times. So you get 150 series points for winning. And then in week 3, you'd get 200. My maths has already gone, so it's 2 times or something like that. This means that there's pretty much an incentive for you to continue to play high quality qualifiers in week 1, 2, and 3, because there's auto qualification slots, there's more series points the deeper you get into the tournaments, into the weeks, and there's potential prize money there. So that's my idea of fixing qualifiers. And that then leads on to semifinals. Now, I hate semifinals. I've always hated semifinals. Semifinals has pretty much always been in my eyes like the most boring, outside of when we had the goated reboot round 1. That was sick. But like generally heats formats that we've had, the upper lower bracket, it's always confusing. So my theory here is 20 teams from the qualifiers, as we've mentioned, already go to grand finals. They're out. So we'll see those big names already in the first 3 weeks, but they've punched a ticket through to grand finals, which means they're not going to be playing in the semifinals. So who would be playing in the semifinals? Well, that would be the 21st team on the series point leaderboard, all the way down to the 70th. Yeah, the math's right. So the first 50 team lobby that would go into upper bracket. And I think we just play top 6, like a normal 6 games, upper bracket, top 20 from that. So 50 teams, top 20, you go straight through to grand finals. Then you have this lower bracket, kind of similar. You fill in the rest of the teams that qualified, the 20 teams in the series point leaderboard. Under that, they go in, and then you get, say, a top 9 qualify through. And then you have one reboot game after that, where rather than having this like semifinals format where you win, you go through to grands, that's boring. Have one reboot round at the end of it where you just need to win a game and you'll qualify through to grand finals. So essentially semifinals is very similar to the way we've got it now, where you've just got a 6-game upper bracket, top 20 goes through, lower bracket plays after that with 3 games because then it's a little bit more tense. Top 9 go through, 1 more game reboot round after that where it's just all the other teams go in and you just have 1 game to win and you qualify through to grand finals. Now, you do have maybe a little less hype in the semifinals there than you do in the qualifiers, but one of the problems is if you put a lot of qualification slots in the semifinals, then the qualifiers is boring, and if you put a lot of qualification slots in the qualifiers, then the semifinals is boring, or is good, sorry, the other way around. So I think that's probably the best balance in my eyes, up to have some, shoot me some ideas on how semifinals could be less boring, but one of the problems is, like, trying to get 50 teams in and fill those all in is kind of tough. So the way you get to grands, 20 teams come from series point leaderboards and qualifiers, 30 team or 10 team, oh my god, I can't speak, let me start again. The way you get to grand finals, 20 teams go from qualifiers, 20 teams go from upper bracket, 9 teams go from lower bracket, 1 game, the final team goes from that reboot round. That'd be pretty cool. On to grand finals then. Now, 2 days, 12 games, no questions. stop this 6-game format that we had in last year. That was no go. I'm very happy to see 2 games, 2-day formats all this year. Grands has been pretty good. Like, I think it can be made much better. Currently we have like 1.5 times points on day number 2, which I think doesn't make it any worse. I don't think I've seen like bad examples of it so far. Maybe there are a couple where it's maybe a little bit less competitive, but I do think it allows for a catch-up mechanic, which is kind of cool. I think at worst, it's okay. And at best, it can make a little bit more exciting. But it can stay, it can go, I'm not too fussed. I want to see some match point, as everyone always wants to talk about. I want to see match point format. If you don't know what match point format is, it essentially means once you hit a certain point threshold, let's say 600 points, the teams who have passed that threshold, all they need to do to end the tournament early and actually win is win a game. So technically a team, say, that is in, you know, 2nd or 3rd place, if multiple teams have passed the 600 point threshold, anyone can win it. So you're kind of just waiting and watching for some of these teams to win. So I'd love to just try that. Like, it might be rubbish. Like, Apex Legends has it, and apparently it's really, really exciting to watch. I've not actually watched any tournaments, but I'd love to just try it. Like, it might be rubbish, but one of the things we need to try with these formats is just change stuff up. See if it works for formats in like season 1. Is match point rubbish? Maybe we change it, alter it, try it again for season 2 next year, and then we try again for season 3. You know, I think one of the things that Fortnite has really struggled with, or there's really an opportunity that's really been missed, is actually just testing things in FNCS formats over the last few years. Like, we've had so many FNCSs and they've been relatively similar without changing a huge amount. So yeah, grand finals, I want to try a match point format. I want to see it happen. So to me, that would fix a lot of the issues. Like, qualifiers would be exciting, semifinals would be okay and more exciting with the 1 reboot round game in there, because that's always good, and grands would be amazing with the match point format there as well. Another, obviously, fix, you know, I talked about the break that was in between. Just don't have a break. I understand that a lot of times between qualifiers and semis, there's like a 1 to 2 to 3 week break, and it's just there to try and potentially get rid of cheaters. But at the end of the day, it ruins a lot of the hype. I know it's maybe a necessary evil to keep cheaters out of semifinals, but I think we just need to find some way around this, because it definitely kills a lot of hype coming into semifinals. And for the yearly schedule now, so that's for maybe each individual FNCS. One of the things I really agree with Ozzy on is I think the fact that the first season being the same game mode, like the main game mode, I don't think it really adds that much. You know, I really like the idea of having a solo season that he pointed out. So season 1 would be a solo season. Season 2 and 3 would both be online FNCS qualifiers, which then qualify you to the Global Championship at the end of the year. I think that's something that I really like the idea of. And it gives, like, you know, new upcoming players a chance to practice and shine in a high quality FNCS lobby solos at the start of the year when it's a new chapter as well. So there's a lot of new hype. I'm sure, like, I wonder if there'd be any correlation between new players at the start of a chapter getting into competitive by playing solos and a season of solos. So I think, you know, maybe there's something really cool there as well. I think that's everything. I think that's the way I would do it. Let me know what you think about your own perfect FNCS format. I'm sure there's a lot of really crap ideas that I'm about to read in the comments, and tear mine apart as well. Right, bye-bye.